Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, crazy amount of stuff to talk about. The Oklahoma City Thunder just won themselves a championship. Tyrese Haliburton tore his ACL. Kevin Durant was just traded today. The offseason is now, I guess, officially underway now that all teams can participate in it. I was also kind of interested over the weekend and in the days following the Lakers sale, what everybody was kind of talking about it. I'll react to the reaction, I guess. And then, like I said, now that all 30 teams can participate in off-season stuff, we will go ahead and give out, one kind of final postseason preview or off-season preview. Yeah, not postseason, but off-season preview of what we hope is to come, what maybe we're hearing a little bit, and all of that good stuff. And then, as always, if you guys have any questions, hit me with them. We aren't going to do a mailbag specific episode here because there was so much stuff that happened today. I want to be able to dedicate enough time to that, but yeah, we'll go ahead and dive on in, starting with the NBA champions of the 2025 season, the Oklahoma City Thunder, them winning it over I think the Pacers are going to go down as my favorite non-Lakers team. They beat the Pacers in Game 7. I don't know if you want to say because Tyrese Haliburton tore his ACL, but it is a part of the story. It is always going to be part of the story. So good luck, Thunder fans. I know you guys are totally well equipped to deal with anybody questioning anything having to do with your favorite basketball team. Quick reminder, please do hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're watching right now. If you're watching on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/Lakers Lounge at Lakers Lounge to find the show there. If you guys are already here, again, hit that subscribe and like button. And then if you guys are listening to this via pod in the morning, please hit subscribe wherever it is that you find your podcasts, preferably on Odyssey, because I am a company man. Let's go ahead and start here with this Game 7. It started so well. It was like it was going to be this whole series from a pure basketball standpoint has been tremendous. It has been so much fun, this series. And at almost any point, you never really knew where the series was heading. The only times that I think you kind of had a good feeling for where the series was heading was in Game 2, when you had a good feeling that OKC was going to win Game 2. Game 6, I guess you had a pretty decent feeling about, I think, how that was going to go because of how Indiana has represented themselves all year. And you head into Game 7 and you're like, anything could happen here. There could be any outcome to this game and it wouldn't shock me one bit. And the Pacers started out beating. They looked like they were still the better team between the two teams here early on. It was close, and this whole series has been really close. And then Haliburton goes to plant on his right foot. You see the snap. You see him go down in a heap. He's slamming the floor. He's already crying there on the floor. Just absolutely heartbreaking moment as you watch that play out. You knew the second you saw the way that he went down, and then when they did the slow motion replays and you could see the ripple through the calf, you're just like, fuck, essentially, and he obviously blew that Achilles, and the rest of the game, the Pacers were playing without their spiritual and actual basketball leader, and it showed, that down the stretch, when the Pacers have been so good, They looked very rudderless. They looked very engineless. You had a fun little TJ McConnell spurt here in there. You maybe hoped Andrew Nemhard would pick things up. He didn't quite. You hoped maybe Pascal Siakam would pick things up a little bit. He only finished with 16 points. And with OKC able to just overload on whoever was creating, their defense looked dominant. It has been dominant all year, but then, when you weaken the team that they're playing against, they become absolutely unscoreable. New word. And that's how the game went. The Thunder absolutely overwhelmed the Pacers in the second half and beat them to the tune of 103-91. The big difference in the game was the third quarter when Indiana only scored 20 points and OKC scored 34. Indiana never really recovered from there, and that was it. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander wins the Finals MVP and has himself, in terms of hardware, one of the best seasons that has ever been had. So kudos to him for that season that he has had in the series that he had. Absolutely incredible stuff from him. Really, really good player. Can be maddening at times to watch, but that doesn't have to take away from how brilliantly he can play basketball. So he deserves all the accolades that he is getting in this moment. And then, the guy who gets to got to talk, I think first after the owner was Sam Presti. And, given the sale, I know it's on our minds. I know what's on everybody's mind watching this. Hey, will the Lakers get involved? Will they do the Friedman thing with Sam Presti? I can't say they won't. I when I asked around about it, I don't think they'll do it right away. I think their first inclination is going to be just like it was with the Dodgers. I think their first inclination is going to be give Rob every tool that he can to work with, that he can get to work with, fill out the rest of the organization and make, completely modernize them, and then see how well Rob is able to handle that. And if he can handle it, great. If not, we'll see the Ned Coletti thing with the Dodgers, and Coletti and Mattingly were shown the door, and Andrew Friedman and Dave Roberts were brought in, and obviously the rest is history there. So maybe we'll see a repeat of that history where the current regime gets their opportunity to run things with more resources at their disposal. And then if it doesn't go to, or if it doesn't play out at the high expectations that Guggenheim is going to have of this organization, we'll see how that goes. That's more on that a little bit later. As far as like the postseason as a whole in reacting to the OKC championship, I know there's a lot of talk of like, is this the next dynasty? Is this where can OKC possibly go from here? And they are better set up for a potential dynasty than either of the previous two teams. Denver, their ownership group isn't very good, and they were overly reliant on young players to step into the fold and be really, really good, and those guys weren't ready for that. You had Boston win a championship, and they are kind of an older roster. I told you guys this after they won that championship, and there was dynasty talk with them, and I said, well, I don't know about the dynasty stuff. They're a little older, very expensive roster. Eventually they're going to start, selling off some of that stuff. And now it happened in a way that we didn't expect because of the Tatum injury. And then with this Thunder team, I think they're better positioned. I don't believe they have to pay Shea right away. Chet Holmgren, I believe, is team controlled for a little bit, and he's going to be even better next year than he was this year, and he was already really good this year. They're supposed to get Nikola Topic back. I hope I'm saying his name. And he was a lottery pick last year. So that team just gets even deeper. And I believe they have the Heat pick from this season. So, yeah, I mean, they have basically an endless, uh, you know, account of draft picks to use however they will. They are a smaller market, so they aren't going to be the players that some teams would be in free agency, and so that will maybe help a little bit. They have not historically been all that interested in paying luxury taxes, and if that remains the case, then that will limit the dynastic appeal or possibilities there. But yeah, I just think I don't think it's a coincidence that the reigning champions the following year have failed to get out of the second round for like 6 or 7 years running. And I'm not saying that that's what I would predict for OKC, but I don't know. I'm the kind of guy who I don't like calling for dynasties, um, at least until the second championship, because it is really bleeping hard to win back to back. And in this CBA that is specifically built to prevent dynasties, it's going to get even harder. And dynasty talk also kind of takes away from the moment and the celebration of the moment. I thought Nuggets fans kind of blew their wad on that in that regard, where it's like, just enjoy your championship. And then if you guys win another one, then you can start having that conversation more seriously. I thought Celtics fans had a little bit more reality in that regard. Some of them, I definitely saw plenty of Boston fans who flew off the handle there. But I think like the overwhelming kind of majority believes that OKC is heading towards this dynastic run, which they could, but I would like to see them win next year before I even start entertaining that type of a conversation. So congrats to to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Can't quite say congrats to the fans because you guys have sucked in my mentions and DMs basically all playoffs. But to the organization, to the players, to the coaches, fantastic run, special season, unbelievably overwhelming, especially defensively. So effing good. Let's move on. I do have a couple quick thoughts on the Halliburton thing. He had that calf strain that he was willing to play on in game 6, and everybody kind of watched him in game 6 with bated breath, and then I think kind of forgot about it heading into game 7. And then he blows that Achilles in game 7. It's the same foot or leg that he had the calf strain on, just like it was Kevin Durant. We saw that with him. And I just think we're reaching a point here where these guys have to be so fine tuned, and their bodies, the margin for error, so that they can operate at the insane level that they're pushing their body to. That margin for error is just nothing, and I just think in this in this kind of era where these guys are expected to defend all 94 square feet of a basketball court, in this era where they play at this crazy pace, and they it's just these teams have to step in and more frequently protect players from themselves. Not saying, look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying that this is definitely one of those situations where the Pacers cost Haliburton this or anything like that. I don't know enough about this to say that definitively, but I do know that we are seeing more and more and more of these Achilles tendons being blown. Um, I can't recall this being as pervasive an injury as it is now, in any point in my life. It was just not something that happened when I was growing up. Remember, like Kobe's, not saying he was the first to ever do it, but yeah, I think Dominique Wilkins did his once, and then I think Outside of that, it was, it wasn't very, very many of them. You had Dame, Tatum, Hallie, and I'm missing one more. In these playoffs alone, the Indiana Pacers had 3 blown Achilles in their organization this season. It's this thing where it's very clearly this injury that I believe is a result of being almost too explosive or pushing your body to be too explosive. When you combine with that, these guys being willing to go out and play when they aren't 100%, it's at a point here where the team the player goes to the team and says, "Hey, I'm willing to, I'm good to go. I'm good to go. I'm good to go." And if the team runs their MRI and sees a calf strain there, or sees swelling, or sees anything like that, they need to be able to, and their med teams need to be able to say, "No, you're not." And the problem is you have this kind of inherent conflict of interest because these med teams are employed by the specific team, and it's not a league thing. They aren't provided to these teams by the league. And as such, if your employer is saying, "Can this guy go? He can go, right? He can go." And if the player, especially a superstar, is saying, "I can go, I can go, let me go, I can go," then the pressure is on the med team to clear said player. And that conflict of interest, if that med team doesn't clear the player, that med team might be looking for different employment next season, and that feels kind of gross. Right? That doesn't feel like that is what the relationship should be between doctor or doctors, plural, and their patients. So I don't know what you could even do about it. I don't, the league doesn't want to get involved with providing teams their, like, maybe they could have like an independent doctor who, a league provided independent doctor who basically it's his job to say this guy cannot go. And if this guy is willing to go, that team cannot fire their medical staff for either clearing or not clearing that player. Um, and you have on top of it now you have these players who have their own doctors. And if that player's doctor is employed by the player and the player's like, "I can go, right? I can go. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go." There's that conflict of interest as it continues there, and that player's doctor and the team doctor, they're both going to be pretty aligned on these things, seeing as they all want to remain employed. It's a tough situation, and I don't know if it, for Halliburton, he's going to miss all of next year. This happened, it takes a year to recover from these things, sometimes more. He's gonna miss all of next season. Jason Tatum's probably gonna miss a big chunk, if not all of next season. Um, I know there's this theory out there that if Halliburton goes and gets his surgery right now, that maybe he could trim a couple of those months off of that recovery. But the problem with an Achilles tear is once you do it once, you are now more likely to do it again. That's what Jen says to me anyway. That's, you really want to mess around with bringing a player back a little too early on something like that and then risk losing them all over again for an entire year again? I don't know. But maybe some of these teams are, based on how they treat some of these situations. Clearly, the moment that they find themselves in can sometimes get too big for them, and they do what is not necessarily in the best interest long term of the player or of the team. Let's talk about Kevin Durant. He gets traded. There is some artistic irony here that Kevin Durant gets traded for a pretty Like, he was traded fairly unceremoniously. It was a pretty measly return that went back to Phoenix, and he arrives in Houston, where there won't be any kind of natural affinity towards this guy. He is, he played in OKC, Golden State, Brooklyn, Phoenix, and now, and then obviously now in Houston. It's he's had this kind of mercenary career, and I don't really know. I was kind of thinking of like, what is he gonna like? Which organization is he gonna be remembered with? I guess it'll be wherever he wins a champ. Well, no, he won a championship in Golden State. He's not going to be remembered as a Warrior. I guess it'll be the Thunder. I don't know. I don't really know. And so anyway, the Kevin Durant trade goes down. Phoenix gets the number 10 pick in this year's draft, Dylan Brooks. They get the scorer off of from Houston, who's on a terrible contract. But Phoenix says they're keeping him, and then they get a bunch of second round draft capital as well. So the return on it, pretty whatever. The funny thing is, KD goes for this small amount in return, and I wasn't even surprised because he's kind of proven that when the going gets tough, he gets going, but like out the door going, not like, all right, it's time to get going here. It's like, no, I'm out. We're outies. And now from all accounts, I don't believe he demanded a trade out of Phoenix, but I don't think he's necessarily all that torn up about getting traded either. And yeah, it's just one of these things where he just goes kind of team to team to team, trying to recreate the relationship that he had in with fans in OKC. But what he didn't realize is that once you demand out of a market that loved KD the way that it loved KD, um, that's kind of gone. And then when you win championships in Golden State and say even that isn't necessarily enough for you because you want to be the guy when you win a championship, then yeah, it just kind of he's chasing this dream situation that I don't believe can exist because of how long he has spent chasing it. It's kind of ugly. So I the it, Houston next year is going to be pretty good. Uh, the uh, the collection of wings that they have is pretty terrifying. Basically, getting to swap out Dylan Brooks for Kevin Durant is kind of nice. They have Durant, they have Jabari Parker, they have is it Parker? But they have Tyrese in there. They have Thompson, the Thompson twin that they have. It's just Houston's going to be really good. They're going to be really difficult to beat next year. And it's one of these spots where like my tweet when it happened was like, all right, KD finally goes in a trade, to be able to like the return on a KD trade or what the price for trading for Kevin Durant is finally so low that the team that traded for him now has a real chance at winning a championship. And I think that's what Houston has next year. So they're going to be really good next year. I was really hoping he would go east and he would go to Miami. He did not. Miami didn't want to trade anything for him, it appears. But all of these teams kind of looked at the idea of trading for Kevin Durant. And it's like, why would we give up our best assets for a guy who has proven time after time after time after time that, instead of providing leadership when shit hits the fan, he steps out of the way of the fan and heads out and finds his next situation. And he's not the facilitator you kind of need him to be your best player on a championship team. and he has never seemed to kind of grasp that. I've spoken to some people who, were there in Phoenix while he was there, and the Devin Booker, Kevin Durant pick and roll that should have been never happened, in part because there are certain things that Kevin Durant considers below him. And you guys have heard me talk about this stuff with stars. Those stars who consider themselves above anything put their team at an incredible disadvantage because you're playing against guys who don't consider themselves above some of those things. SGA gets after it defensively. He's not the best defender, and the stats from him defensively this series weren't great, but he at least competes on that end. You have Nikola Jokic, who has improved defensively in his time in the league. You could just run. Steph Curry has always been willing to operate off of the ball. Tyrese Haliburton's ability to operate off of the ball made their teams more dynamic. And so, you look around the league, and those teams that, the Lakers a couple of years ago, when you had Anthony Davis being willing to do all of the dirty work that he needed to do to win that championship, that made them that much more special, right? And you had LeBron also doing the same stuff. And that team is one of my favorite Lakers teams of all time. And they had one of the more dominant runs in recent postseason history. So, KD considering himself above certain things, and then also, very clearly being far too happy to just peace out anytime things don't go exactly as he had planned. The combination of all of that and his age and his contract situation, all these teams basically looked at trading for Kevin Durant. It's like, yeah, we love the idea of trading for Kevin Durant, but the reality of trading for Kevin Durant appears to suck. And the offers for KD really kind of show that. All right, let's get into Lakers stuff. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about here is the response to the Lakers being sold, where I noticed a lot of, yeah, but is it actually going to help? Yeah, but is it this? Is it that? And it's just so crazy to me that anybody could learn anything about the way that the Lakers were being run and the way that they were not spending on certain things, and then see the way that Guggenheim has spent on those things, and then still say with a serious face, yeah, but I don't know, but get out of here. Stop. All you're doing is seeing happy Lakers fans and being like, shit, damn it. I don't want them to be happy. I'm going to try to piss on their parade. And fine, like, some people are really good at that, and some people, that's a part of fandom, is seeing. I don't particularly love seeing Boston Celtics fans happy. I haven't loved seeing OKC fans all that happy. So, like, there are times that I literally just rained on OKC's parade, saying how I don't think that they are a future dynasty. So that's all part of sports conversation, sports talk, fandom, all that stuff. But like, I've seen comparisons made to other sales recently, and specifically we'll start with the Clippers, or we'll talk about the Clippers and how one of the very popular responses when I said that this is a landscape changing event was how, well, Ballmer bought the Clippers and they haven't won anything since. And fair, totally fair. I would compare the number of wins they get per year under Ballmer to how many wins they were averaging under Donald Sterling. I would also add to the fact the just kind of inherent comfort that comes with rooting for a Steve Ballmer team compared to the racist Donald Sterling team. I think, knowing and being comfortable in the fact that Ballmer is always going to be willing to spend whatever it takes, that has to be worth something. And that's something I'm looking forward to with the Lakers. And for people to try to compare what the Clippers were capable of to what the Lakers will be capable of under more productive ownership, I would compare where the two franchises were at the time of their sale. The Clippers have been a joke my entire life. They have to climb this vertical cliff, right? Think Half Dome in Yosemite, the front side of Half Dome. Uh, like climbing that basically, um, while in a market that already has the Lakers, like it's going to take. It was always going to take a long time for Ballmer to step in and like how like when a house gets a termite infestation that's just too bad and you have to put the tent over it and you do the Breaking Bad thing where you just completely carpet bomb the house and you try to rid the house of any and all termites and stuff. That's what Ballmer basically had to do, where the rot and was such a terrible infestation because Donald Sterling was so bad that it was always going to take such a long time to get rid of the infestation, get rid of the rot, replace those supporting beams, and then turn, really start to turn the franchise around. And sometimes you make mistakes like trading for Paul George, trading the guy who is the Finals MVP today for Paul George specifically, and that's the kind of thing that happens when you're fighting the rot from the previous regime and you're trying to build this bright future. It also doesn't help that the guy that you really, really wanted to sign and frankly needed to sign, Kawhi Leonard, specifically requested Paul George and said, if you don't get him, I'm going to the Lakers. What choice did the Clippers have? So the uh the reason I bring up the Clippers and have talked about them to the extent that I have is that foundational rot is not there with the Lakers in the way that it was with the Clippers. The Lakers have been able to attain incredible heights, albeit with poor process, albeit with poor resource allocation or resource investment. The Lakers have, like, Guggenheim is stepping into a brand that doesn't have nearly the organizational rot that the Clippers did when Ballmer stepped in. And that means that Guggenheim can more thoroughly hit the ground running. I've always talked about the meat that was left on the bone organizationally with the Lakers. That doesn't mean even while they were leaving that meat on the bone, they could still have eaten really well. Like if you basically you treat the Lakers basically like a chicken wing here. One bite of a really good mango habanero wing is still a really good bite, and you do that often enough that it could still be a decent meal. It just wasn't the meal that it maybe should have been. And here with the Lakers, you bring in somebody who's going to ensure that every single bite from those mango habanero wings is going to be enjoyed and utilized and maximized. And now you have this organization that attracts stars but sucks on the margins, or even is good sometimes on the margins but doesn't maximize those good events, right? You find an Alex Caruso, but then you let him walk. You find an Austin Reeves, and hell, there's a chance that Austin might walk a year from now. But if you basically, maintain the strengths of the organization, draft scouting for one of them, star attraction for another. If you maintain those strengths, but then also build on those strengths by building up the weaknesses of the organization, scouting, intel, analytics, video, med team, nutritional team, conditioning, strength coaches, shooting coaches, all of those things. Now all of a sudden you're one of the better run organizations in the sport. And for me, even granting that some of the skepticism is fair, because we need to actually see it in practice, and it's not as easy in basketball to just step in and spend your way to to you know production. You can't just go out and trade for Carl Crawford and Adrian Gonzalez and the pitcher who I always forget. You can't just do that and eat that bill just for the sake of employing Adrian Gonzalez. Like, if you do that in the NBA, that's the Bradley Beal acquisition in Phoenix, and we saw how that sunk everything that they were trying to do. So, yeah, I understand. Well, one thing, shitting on the Lakers is a great way to get clicks. So anybody who has been skeptical of this, I'm very cynical on these things, and I think it's a really easy way to get clicks, because you're talking about the Lakers, you're pissing off Lakers, so you're going to get those hate listens, and you're saying things that other fans are going to like hearing, because they don't probably like the Lakers all that much, and that's how you arrive at content that does well, while you doubt something that seems like such an undoubtable thing. That's for one thing there, the cynical view of it. The second thing is, maybe there is so much rot that, like, I've been thinking about this. Let's say the Lakers want to completely reinvigorate their organization with all of that spending that we talked about. Let's say they want to start that with the front office. You have Guggenheim sit down with Jeannie Buss, and Jeannie Buss goes, Mark Walters says to Jeannie Buss, all right, so here's the deal. I think Rob has done some really good things in his current position. He's done some really bad things in his position, and we would like to rid ourselves of the really, really bad things by employing some people who make sure that fewer things fall through the cracks. Jeannie says, no. I told Rob he gets to run the front office. He gets this, he gets that. This is how I want it to run. Then what? It's in the contract, apparently, that Jeannie gets to continue on as governor for at least a year or two. Do you push her out? Can you push her out? Is there any way to convince her that this is actually will we start getting a leak off where new ownership steps in and says, hey, this is what we want to do? Jeannie says no. Will you start getting leaks of, like, Jeannie's getting, report Jeannie Buss gets in way of Guggenheim investing into the organization? Is that something that's going to go down? If you really want to be skeptical, I guess these are the points that are fair to make, I would say. Let's say Guggenheim approaches JJ Redick and says, hey, any assistant on the market, we're willing to pay up. Who do you want? We'll go make that coach, an assistant coach, a godfather offer. Who do you want? He goes, I don't know. Would you have to fire Scott Brooks or Nate McMillan? Yeah, we probably would, because whoever we make that godfather offer to is going to want to be seat number 1 on your bench. Well, I don't want to fire Scott Brooks or Nate McMillan. We had a pretty good season last year. Then what? The thing about change is it's scary for people. If change wasn't scary for people, we'd make a lot more progress, a lot more quickly. And if Mark Walter or all of Guggenheim, look, the easy stuff is the video team and the med team and the nutrition team and all of those supplementary roles. That stuff is easier. But the roles that start to impact other people's power, that's where this gets a little bit tricky. And that's going to be where it's really interesting to watch. All that said, we've watched Guggenheim do this before. And if the people that are currently employed kick and scream and fight on these steps, we have seen, not saying the Ned Coletti and I don't know enough about, well, I would imagine Don Mattingly probably didn't love all of the analytics stuff that made its way into the organization. So I could see him kicking and screaming a little bit, but we saw what happened if they did. Those guys were shown the door. Ned Coletti, I think, played baseball a little bit and as such was able, I believe, to stay on at Spectrum and then stay on in like a consultant role. Don Mattingly is gone and was made gone by that organization and was replaced by one of the longest tenured coaches in all of professional sports, in American professional sports at least. And that's investment. And that's investment into the right person. And that's what it looks like when the person you view as the right person actually turns out to be that person, and you work out that working relationship to such a fine tune in the way that they have. If we don't see the type of commitment to change and progress that we are anticipating here as Lakers fans, that's where it's going to be. That's where we'll see a few fireworks. And look, what's the cliche? You don't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. You know, if it turns out that the eggs that need to be broken are the Ramby and Pelinka, then that's kind of what everybody had in mind in the first place. All right. Let's go through the comments here to see if y'all have any questions. I did see a couple interesting one. Here's Chris Van Ginkel. This was a good question. Hey, if Haliburton is out for the season, do you still think they go into the tax when they can't win a title? That could mean Turner might have a market again or might be on the market again. That's a really interesting question. Feels kind of gross talking about this so quickly. While Haliburton is greeting his teammates with tears in his eyes in the hallway. So I'm not going to go too in depth on this and just kind of give them a little bit of space on that front, or give his fans a little bit of space on this front. What I will say is, in the East, I think we're about to see a bit of an arms race. I think with Boston missing Tatum for a year, with Indiana missing Haliburton for a year, I think, Milwaukee was already trying to retool around Giannis. I think that will be interesting to watch. Maybe Indiana positions himself, like Turner wasn't very good in the finals, so maybe as a result of that, he's that much more available potentially. But I know Miami is always going to be competing. That like Detroit made a lot of progress this year, so maybe they take another step in the right direction and they do whatever they can personnel wise to make that possible. The Knicks, right, are going to have a decision to make when it comes to Karl Anthony Towns, and if they execute that decision well, then you're looking at another entry into that, and hopefully those teams take guys from the West and bring them east, so that the West isn't such a freaking slugfest the way that it was this year, where the Oklahoma City Thunder were an overwhelming regular season team, and at basically every stage other than the first round, they were tested. Memphis sucked. So, and they're going to continue to suck. So we can kind of set them aside. But Denver pushed OKC to 7. I guess Minnesota didn't really push them, but then Indiana pushed OKC. Like, we are living in an era where matchups are really going to matter, margins are really going to matter. The East being wide open, if they can pull enough talent from the West to make the West that much easier, hallelujah hallelujah is I guess the term to use there. But as far as Indiana specifically, it's something to keep an eye on for sure, Chris. It's a great question. I don't feel all that comfortable answering it because I just feel terrible for Hallie going down there and feel terrible for their fans. Yeah, it's a tough spot. So I'm not gonna I I'm gonna give it a couple of days or at least a day or so. Maybe I'll talk about it tomorrow. I don't know. But it's just so icky to be like, "Hey, your star blew his Achilles. You're probably not going to win a championship next year. Can we have your center?" And look, that's how those conversations are probably going to go around the league eventually, but probably not right now while they are literally either actually prepping Haliburton for surgery or like scheduling it. So, yeah. Let's see. DHR 550. Why do you think there have been so many Achilles injuries in recent years? I gave some of my thoughts on this already earlier in the show. So maybe go back and try to find that. But yeah, I just think it's a matter of, in professional sports, we are pushing the human body further than it was meant to be pushed. And you bend a stick a little too much, no matter how flexible or malleable that stick might be, you bend that thing a little too much and it's going to break eventually. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with a lot of these guys' bodies given out the way that they are, especially that region. You have so much, like with your Achilles and with your calves, those types of injuries and anything going on in the feet. Those to me are explosion injuries, repeated explosions that start there at the base. And um, there is some technique stuff that I saw out there on Twitter. I don't know enough about it to talk about that, but what I do think is these athletes are pushing their bodies to the brink day in, day out to not just compete on a nightly basis, but also get better over the course of their careers and get more explosive and add inches to their game one way or another. And eventually, again, you bend that stick a little too much, and eventually it's going to go. Let's see. I'm going to go down here. Dark Galaxy. Have I heard anything on Andrew Wiggins? He's the kind of guy that I could see the Lakers being interested in. I think he makes a little bit too much money for them to be all that comfortable trading for him. But they do like pedigree, former number 1 overall pick. He won a championship before, is still a good 3-and-D wing, specifically with foot speed. That's something that the Lakers really, really need. He plays in Miami, an organization that has very close ties, obviously, to the Lakers. So, I haven't heard it specifically, but I think it's safe to assume that the Lakers have called about Wiggins and checked in on what his price would be. But yeah, the problem with the price is he makes so much money that it gets kind of tricky trading however many role players and expirings that they would need to trade him. And then also in Miami, you have a you have a an executive who I think is pretty clearly past his prime, is how I'll say it. And he, I think, is very adamant about competing year out, year in, year out, year in, year out. And what that has led to is a pretty mediocre product. And I don't think while Riley is there, they are ever going to embrace a rebuild. And I don't know if the Lakers would be able to get Wiggins without Miami finally considering a rebuild. Let's go with Dark Galaxy. I know Rui and Gabe match, but I don't think that's enough for Miami to consider the trade. Let's see. Saucy the Dawn. I'm saying sauce. Have you heard anything on Ayton? I've heard that the Lakers have called and talked about it with Portland. I put in my most recent piece for Clutch Points how Rob and Joe Cronin talk as much as any two executives do in the league. They spend a lot of time negotiating and talking about, players and possibilities and stuff like that. But the problem with Rob and Joe getting together in some of these talks is Rob has a hard line stance on his price. Joe has a hard line stance on his price. Both of those guys don't like to move off of their price very much. So they'll talk and they'll negotiate and they'll show interest in each other's players. But at the end of the day, haven't been able to consummate a trade because they are both so cemented on their definition of their guys' value. So Ayton is definitely a possibility. He's one of my favorite kind of options in terms of what it would cost to get him and everything involved with trading for him. That said, I don't think that's the Lakers. I don't think Ayton is the Lakers' top priority right now. So we'll see. Everything is going to heat up. Hell, it might heat up between now and when this episode airs, which reminds me, you guys better hit subscribe either here, probably here, honestly, as we head into the off season. You're going to want to be subscribed because we have emergency episodes where I will go live as soon as we get a big rumor, an actual trade or whatever. I will go ahead and go live on some of that stuff. And the best way to make sure you don't miss it is to be subscribed, because if I go live on some of that stuff and between recording the pod and then editing it and then posting it, all of that stuff, you just never know what you might miss in the meantime. So hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, whatever you have to do to make sure you don't miss anything, because this offseason is going to bring its share of fireworks, and I think the Lakers are going to be very active in it. Rob said they would, so we'll see. All right, I am going to go ahead and hop off here now in preparation for that craziness like we talked about. Again, reminder, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. That stuff helps us quite a bit too. If you guys were watching this on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge to find the show there. If you guys are listening to this via podcast in the morning, hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your pods, preferably on Odyssey. And yeah, until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin. Oh, a reminder. I do need to remind you guys about this. The day after the draft, we have our first episode of the Great Western Forum, which I am thrilled. I'm not kidding. This project has been years in the work. Here's the logo for it. You got Lakers Lounge right there. You got Buha's block right there. You have the Laker Film Room pod right there. At the very least, it's going to be Jovan. It'll be Pete from LFR and myself. Maybe from time to time, Darius might step in. We'll see. But you're going to want to check out all of that good stuff. The other part of this that I'm really excited about is the other segments. So you're going to have Pete and Jovan and me in the first segment in all of those episodes. We're going to have whatever the topic is for that episode of that conversation. That'll be kind of the central theme that runs through all of that episode. But sometimes we're going to have a guest. It might be a player. It might be a coach. It might be a former executive. It might be anybody else from, a former player, all of that good stuff. That'll be one, every so often that'll be a segment. But the reason we call it the Great Western Forum is because it is going to be all of your favorite Lakers content creators. I have really good relationships with basically everybody there. Literally going to do a crossover pod with my old show, Locked on Lakers, this week because the Kamenetsky brothers have been so great over the years. You name it. Trevor, Harrison, Raj, Sean, Dan, which, by the way, congrats on the athletic job, Dan. Any number of people. Eric Pincus is somebody that we're thinking about for this first episode because of the organizational stuff that has been going on. It is going to be incredible. It will be the best Lakers podcast that is out there. And I am honored, honestly, to be involved in it. Honored that like Pete and Jovan trusted me with building this thing out. It is going to be, at least for right now, a once a month thing. And then depending on how popular it is, how much we like doing it, all of that stuff, maybe we'll make it twice a month. We'll see how many people are interested in appearing on the show or coming back to the show. But it is going to start as every month. It is going to sit here on this feed too. So don't worry. You don't have to go and subscribe to a different feed. It's going to be on my feed. It'll be on Jovan's feed. Maybe Pete's. He's kind of debating about that a little bit. But at the very least, this feed, this YouTube channel, Jovan's YouTube channel, his feed, it's going to be in plenty of places. The best way to make sure you aren't going to miss it is to subscribe here to this feed. So again, more reason to do that too. This has been a lot of me talking about me. So I'm going to stop doing it because I don't feel very comfortable doing it. But you're not going to want to miss that. Great Western Forum Pod is coming the day after the draft. We got Harrison probably coming on tomorrow. We got the Cambros. I think Brian available a little bit later in the week. It is a Pete week here as well. Going to talk to Jovan either on his or my show. And again, day after the draft, first episode of the Great Western Forum. We are in the offseason, everybody. Let's get to it. Let's enjoy it. Good luck. Have a great rest of your weekend. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.